Hey guys.
Hi.
Got my sidekick. She thought she'd pop in real quick and say, hey, as we start to read the last chapter of Seed Folks. So we finished The Thief of Always. Now we're going to finish Seed Folks. And this is the very last chapter. And her name is Florence. So again, all told from a different perspective, but about the same thing. And that's the garden that they've planted in Cleveland. All different backgrounds, lives, everything else. So here's the very last chapter of Seed Folks. Let's see how it all ties together and how these perspectives play off of each other and within each other too. My great-grandparents walked all the way from Louisiana to Colorado. That was in 1859. They were both freed slaves, and they wanted to get good and far from cotton-growing country. They went over the mountains just to be safe and homesteaded along the Gunnison River, which is how my grandfather and my father and my sisters and I all came to be born there, the first black family in the whole county. My father called them our seed folks because they were the first of our family there. I think of them when I see any of the people who started the garden on Gibb Street. They're seed folks too. I'm talking about that first year before there were spigots and hoses and the tool shed and new soil. And before the landlord started charging more for apartments that look on the garden. I would have been in on the garden for sure if it weren't for this arthritis in my hands. Growing up out in the country, I still miss country things. My husband's from here. He doesn't know about the smell of a hay field and eating beans off the vine instead of from the store. I had to settle for being a watcher. I wasn't the only one. I'd see others on the fire escapes or standing on the sidewalk like me. One day I looked up and I saw a head in a window moving forward and back. It was a man who'd pulled up his rocking chair. He was watching the gardeners like TV. My grandmother's sampler from when she was a girl said, "Be not solitary, be not idle." That was easy all those years in the library. Being retired, it's harder. So I try to take a walk every day, which is how I found the garden to begin with. I'd always stop there to see what was new. I was just a watcher. But I was proud of the garden as if it were mine, proud and protective. I remember how mad I got when I saw a man reach through someone's fence by the sidewalk and try to grab a tomato. I said, "How dare you?" He pulled back his hand and said he'd heard it was a community garden. It's sad every fall seeing it turn brown. Fewer and fewer people there. That very first year was the hardest. It had been such a wonderful change to see people making something for themselves instead of waiting for a welfare check. To see a part of the neighborhood looking better every day. And to smell those good smells of growing plants. The green drained away. Then the frost hit. You'd pass and hear those dry corn stalks shaking in the wind as if they were shivering. The pumpkins were about the only color left. And then the boys sold them all. Some people cut up their old plants with clippers and dug them back into the soil. A few covered their ground with leaves. But once that job was done, it was done. And by November, the cats were the only ones there. That winter was a cold one. Cold as Colorado. You'd walk back by the garden, covered with snow, just the fence tops sticking out, and you try to remember it back in July. Someone stuck a Christmas tree there in December. It stayed up until March. It's hard to tell one month from another that time of year. It's all just winter. Because of the weather, I missed lots of walks. When I did get out, I couldn't go past the garden without slowing down to look, even though there was nothing growing. Sometimes there'd be one of the gardeners there just looking too. You can't see Canada across Lake Erie, but you know it's there. It's the same with spring. You have to have faith, especially in Cleveland. Snow in April always breaks your heart. I think we had 2 April snows that year. Waiting for the snow to melt was like waiting for a glacier to move. Finally, it was gone for good. The ground was back, and last year's leaves, like a bookmark, showing where you'd left off. It was a joy to get out again, just to walk without wearing a heavy coat and boots. Felt like flying. But the garden was still empty. I was disappointed. I suppose it was still too early to plant, and I began to wonder if anyone would come. Maybe no one was interested, or maybe the city had shut it down or sold the lot. I was worried. Then one day, I passed it, and someone was digging. It was a little Oriental girl with a trowel and a plastic bag of lima beans. Think about that and who that might be. I didn't recognize her. It didn't matter. I felt as happy inside as if I'd just seen the first swallow of spring. And then I looked up. There was a man in the rocker. We waved and waved to each other. And that's where Seed Folks ends. So super interesting that we kind of ended up with Florence making the observations of the garden and ending up right where we started with the lima beans and then the little Oriental girl who is Kim, who we started the text off with. And watching that garden bring that community together and building relationships. Everybody had their own part, their own version, but it all connected them. So, just something to think about and leave you thinking about the relationships that we all build and how that kind of goes through the rest of our lives and how we continue to communicate and just love each other. So I will be starting a different book soon. Not a chapter book, probably some short stories, which I think you'll really enjoy too, some picture books, and we'll go along with some of those. So be ready for those, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.